pumping as many factories as he can possibly manage with these two bases. Also keeping a tank over in his main base. I like that, and it's going to turn out to be very effective right now because Fantasy is coming in for another harassment right now. Ooh, that one mine definitely lands. Ooh, the second mine goes down, but the tank survives. One SCV killed by the splash damage, and yeah, there those wraiths come back into play, being able to snipe off the injured tank defending the main base for Leta. Still not much going on in the back and forth in the middle of the map. Leta has a little bit more forward of a position, but he is losing that now. Fantasy trying to escape and maybe do a little bit of flanking on Leta's troops that are exposed in the middle of the map. Fantasy is sticking with a lot of vultures, not having to build any Goliaths because Leta has given up on the wraiths. There are still a couple of wraiths out, so Leta is still keeping those Goliaths around his army. And so he's going to be going Goliath and tank versus Fantasy's vultures and tanks. And, you know, in that battle I really like the vultures better. You know, the spider mines can really make a huge difference. And here comes the first big engagement. We have Fantasy pushing into Leta's sieged up tanks, and some very nice mine placement there by Fantasy, being able to take out that first line of tanks almost entirely, and there's a huge group of tanks backing that up, so probably about 7 or 8 tanks also for Fantasy sitting back there. The first wave of vultures has died down from Fantasy, so he's going to have to slow his attack because he doesn't want to be walking into siege tanks without... Well, with his own tanks, I guess is what I'm trying to say. He wants to have those cheaper vultures to be able to come in and hopefully put down some spider mines to break that front line, but still, Fantasy has been able to mass up a big group of tanks and has, you know, I don't know if he's lost a single tank in this game. He has been able to keep all of his tanks. Well, there, one goes down. Leta coming in and trying to intercept this group as they try to move forward, but still those vultures leading the way and those spider mines are doing a lot of damage to Leta's tanks. Leta has lost a couple handfuls of tanks, but he is going in for an earlier expansion here. He has just finished up his third base over in the 10 o'clock position on Moon Glaive. That's sort of his typical third base, and ooh, nice little placement there. I didn't know that that was landable. Fantasy has dropped a couple of tanks right there in the middle of the map. Oh, I guess that is pretty obviously landable now that I look at it. I wonder if the small ones are landable as well, but he's got himself on a tower there with a couple of siege tanks, so he's going to have a lot of vision and mobility. Wow, Leta coming in, Fantasy leaving his natural expansion completely undefended. Leta coming in and doing the Fantasy play. Well, it's also Leta's play too, but running in with a huge group of vultures and taking out a lot of those SCVs at Fantasy's natural expansion. It looks like he might... oh no, that was not his natural expansion. That was the third base, so Fantasy already had his third base up and running. But those vultures going from that third base into the natural expansion now and getting another group of SCV kills. So Leta being able to do some economic damage here in the mid-game to keep himself in this, because really Fantasy's been winning pretty much every engagement. So Leta in a little bit of trouble on that account, but doing some economic damage to help himself out. Once again, these vultures leading the way, pushing into the siege line for Leta, and it's going to be a close defense here. I think Leta will be able to hold. He has wiped out all of those vultures, so those tanks are just going to be sitting there hanging out. But, well, I don't know. Yeah, Fantasy is able to come in. Those wraiths are actually still helping him out, being able to push back that barracks to stop Leta's vision a little bit. And Fantasy trying to go in for a similar vulture harassment, sends in a single vulture, but it's not going to get anything done. Leta is on top of that. And so now, but yeah, it looks like Fantasy has also set up a fourth base there. So he has his main, his natural expansion. He's moved on to the third expansion down there in the 6 o'clock position, and is now taking the 5 o'clock expansion, which is, I believe, the natural expansion of the southeast starting position. I could be wrong about that. But still, I mean, Fantasy is looking very strong. He's controlling a lot of the territory in this game, and he's expanding all over the place, which is what he needs to do. Leta is losing a few too many of these engagements for my taste, and he's going to have to pull out something special to get himself back into this. I mean, he's not in a terrible position. He's still running on 3 bases pretty comfortably. He hasn't taken much economic damage, just losing a bunch of troops. And obviously he'll be a base down if Fantasy's able to keep his newest expansion up and running. Sorry, it's been a lot of talking this morning, so my voice is starting to give up, having to drink some water every once in a while. But yeah, this is definitely going to be moving into the late game, so maybe we are going to see some of those super exciting finishes that I was thinking of. It looks like somebody's building a science facility. Saw that down at the bottom. It looks like, I guess, both players. Leta's already got his science facility built. Fantasy is building one right now, so Leta actually might be able to gain a little bit of an upgrade advantage before Fantasy can finish building his science facility. It looks like right now Leta is at +1 ground weapons. I'm not sure where Fanny's at. It looks like same thing, +1 ground weapons, so even upgrades at the moment, but Leta has the opportunity at least to upgrade a little bit faster. Leta now is building up a pretty sizable dropship force and keeping them away from his main army, so I think he might be thinking about sort of hiding this from Fantasy for a little bit so that he can just all of a sudden have 6 dropships and come in and hopefully do huge amounts of damage to maybe one of Fantasy's bases or maybe to his sieged up tanks. Excuse me. Those dropships have been mobilized now. It looks like 5, maybe 6 of them, yeah, coming in, and they are going to be dropping on this group of 3 siege tanks, so they're easily going to be able to handle that, but are they going to be able to, that maybe not the best opportunity for a reveal right there. He is able to defend some territory up in the northeast corner that he might use for an expansion in the near future, but for now, just killing 3 tanks with those, and I was hoping that he was just going to go straight in for a base and try to wipe out a base before Fantasy can react to all these dropships, but instead just trying to play it safe, keep himself in the game, and keep defending. I believe that Fantasy, Leta is now setting up his, I guess that's his 4th base, over sort of in the northeast, the 2 o'clock position. But Fantasy is already on 1, 2, 3, 4, and setting up his 5th base. He has pretty much full control of that southeast spawn position right now and that natural expansion, so unless Leta can do something about this, this could be very bad for him. Leta trying to move in now in towards that natural expansion in the southeast and do some damage, but Fantasy has that well defended. He's got his own group of dropships as well, and I think he might be thinking about moving in towards one of Leta's bases to try to wipe one out. Vulture's coming in late game, but Leta on top of that with a drop, being able to clear those out very quickly. But I'd still like to see him play a little bit more aggressively and try to take out one of Fantasy's bases. It would definitely be a huge loss for him if he were to, lose this dropship force without doing any damage. But at this point, he's just going to be bleeding dry right now. You can see that already his main base and his natural expansion are, his main base is fully mined out. His natural expansion is getting close. Fantasy sieging up and trying to do a little bit of damage over in that Leta's 3rd base to that refinery, but not going to be able to get all that much done because Leta's repairing it pretty well. And I think this is actually a little risky for Fantasy because if Leta wanted to, he could just come in and drop on those and do a pretty good job. Instead, he is dropping down at the 3 o'clock position and trying to take back some of this territory over in the southeast position. Leta dropping in, clearing out all of the defenses, and wow, those siege tanks for Fantasy actually able to take down the refinery. So Leta losing a refinery right there at his 3rd base, so another bit of economic damage done by Fantasy, so I'm really starting to get worried here about Leta. He has been able to gain most of this territory up in the northeast, so he is definitely not out of this yet. But if this is going to become a north versus south map right here, like, it's just not in favor of the northern position, because there's 2 starting positions in the south and only 1 in the north. So you know, right now they are sharing some of the expansions of the southeast. It looks like Leta has that, you know, what would be considered